A billionaire left a $0 tip, but the waitress found something under the plate that exposed a secret no one was supposed to discover. The rush of the Friday night crowd felt like it was swallowing me whole. Plates clattered, orders blurred together, and the greasy diner air stuck to my skin like a second layer. I was weaving between tables with 3 plates balanced on one arm when my coworker snickered from behind the counter and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't expect tips tonight, Elena. People like you get ignored." I didn't have the energy to fire back. I just breathed through the sting and kept moving. "Hi everyone. My name is Elena Marquez, I'm 25, and this story begins on the night a stranger walked in and destroyed me, before saving my entire life." The door chimed, and everything seemed to shift with it. A man stepped inside, soaked from the rain yet somehow elegant in a crisp black suit that didn't belong anywhere near this cheap diner. He didn't look around. He didn't smile. He didn't do anything except walk to the corner booth and sit like he was waiting for the world to come to him. I approached with a tired smile. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" He looked up briefly, eyes sharp, unreadable, then nodded at something on the menu. No small talk, no warmth, just silence. All night he barely touched his food. He watched everything quietly, his expression carved from stone. And there I was, trying to keep up, pretending the pain in my lower back wasn't setting my spine on fire, pretending rude customers weren't draining what little patience I had left. When he finished, he stood, placed the bill on the table, and walked out without a glance. I flipped the receipt and felt my stomach drop. A $0 tip. Zero. My coworker burst into laughter. "Wow. You can't even get a tip from rich people." Harsh. Heat crawled up my neck. Embarrassment, anger, confusion. I couldn't tell which was louder. I reached to clear the table, ready to scrape his untouched food into the bin, when something strange caught my eye. A folded piece of paper. Thin. Clean. Hidden deliberately under the plate. My fingers hesitated before lifting it. My heartbeat thudded in my ears as I slid it open, afraid of what I'd find, afraid of why a man like him would leave anything behind at all. The diner noise faded. Everything felt distant. And with a shaky breath, I whispered the question that would haunt the rest of my night. Why would a billionaire leave this for me? The paper felt lighter than it should have, almost too fragile for the weight it carried. When I unfolded it fully, I expected money, maybe a sarcastic line, maybe nothing at all. But instead, there it was, a single neat sentence written in clean, sharp handwriting. "You deserve better than this place. Don't leave until you read the second message." For a moment, I just stared at it. The words didn't make sense. A billionaire had just left me a note. Not a tip, not money, a message. Shock crawled through me first. Then confusion. Then something colder, fear. Was this a warning? A prank? Some rich man's twisted way of entertaining himself in a cheap diner? My heart wouldn't slow down. I kept glancing around the room, suddenly certain someone was watching me. Every customer looked suspicious. Every shadow felt like it had eyes. I tucked the note into my apron, feeling my pulse thudding against it. I started checking everywhere, the receipts, the salt shakers, napkins, table edges, even under other plates. Nothing. No sign of a second message. Maybe he was messing with me. Maybe it was all some joke. Before I could hide the note better, my coworker snatched it from my hand. "Oh wow," she laughed loudly, waving it around. "Look at this. He's probably playing with you. Rich men love dangling girls like toys." I grabbed it back so fast she actually froze. "Don't touch it," I said sharply, more protective than I meant to sound. She raised her hands, mocking. "Relax, Elena. You think he left you some secret treasure?" I shoved the note back into my pocket, but the damage was done. My chest felt tight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't like that someone else had touched it. It felt personal, too personal. A memory slid into my mind, the kind that hits like a knife instead of a whisper. My brother's small hand in mine the day the doctor told me he'd need lifelong assistance. Me working 3 jobs since then, the diner, the night cleaning shifts, the morning deliveries, all to keep us afloat. No vacations. No weekends. No rest. Just survival. Why would a billionaire care about someone like me? Hours dragged by, and the diner started emptying. My feet ached. My eyes burned. I was about to give up on the whole thing, when something caught my attention. A tiny corner of folded paper sticking out from behind the sugar container on table 9, the table he sat at. My breath hitched. I pulled it out. The handwriting was the same. But this time, the message was worse. Much worse. Elena, someone is lying to you. Don't trust your manager. More is coming. Everything inside me went cold. How did he know my name? How did he know about my manager? And what did more is coming mean? I lifted my head slowly and stared across the diner. My manager was smiling at a customer. That fake, greasy smile that always felt like a warning. But tonight it looked dangerous. The next evening, I walked into the diner with a tight chest and a head full of questions I couldn't shake off, no matter how many times I tried. I kept glancing at the door like a nervous habit I couldn't control. And then, almost on cue, the bell chimed. He stepped in. The same black suit. The same unreadable expression. The same quiet presence that somehow made the whole place shift around him. But tonight, he didn't sit randomly. He walked straight to my section, sat at the exact same table, and folded his hands like he'd been waiting for me. My pulse kicked up. I forced myself to walk over, tray tucked under my arm so he wouldn't see how my fingers trembled. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, "Why did you leave me those notes?" He looked up slowly. Those sharp eyes met mine, not cold, not warm, just searching. Instead of answering, he asked softly, "Do you trust the people around you?" It wasn't the question I expected. It wasn't even a question meant for small talk. It felt like a test. Before I could respond, my manager stormed over like he'd been waiting for a reason to explode. He grabbed my arm, too tightly, and yanked me aside. "What did I tell you?" he hissed. "Stop talking to customers. You're replaceable. Don't test me." His breath smelled like stale cigarettes and ego. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. From the corner of my eye, I saw the man in the suit watching us, silently, intensely. Not angry, not surprised, concerned. His jaw tightened just slightly, like he understood more than he should have. My manager finally released me with a shove. "Now get back to work." I swallowed the humiliation, nodded, and forced my legs to move. The man didn't comment on what he saw. He just placed his order calmly, ate quietly, and the entire time his gaze flickered to me as if reading pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know I was part of. When he finished, he stood up, left the cash for his meal, and walked away again. No glance back. No goodbye. And again, a $0 tip. My coworker snickered from behind the counter. "Maybe he just doesn't like you." I ignored her. My attention locked onto the plate. I lifted it slowly. Another note. My stomach twisted as I opened it. "Check your pay stubs. Your hours are being stolen." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Hours. Stolen. I marched to the back office, adrenaline drowning out the fear. "Can I see last month's timesheets?" My manager snorted. "What for? Planning a complaint? You think anyone would believe you?" He shoved a stack of papers at me and walked away laughing. Later that night, during closing, I sat alone at the back counter and traced every shift I'd worked. Every hour. Every missing entry. Every number silently stolen from me. The billionaire was right. My stomach dropped. My chest tightened. I stumbled into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall, shaking. Tears blurred everything. "Who are you?" I whispered into my palms, voice cracking, "and why are you helping me?" The next few days felt like walking on glass, but I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Every time I clocked in, every time I forced a smile for a customer, the stolen hours buzzed in the back of my mind like a warning siren. So when the manager went to take his smoke break, I slipped into the back office and started taking photos of everything. Timesheets, payroll logs, shift schedules. Proof. Real proof. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. I kept imagining him walking in, catching me, ending everything. And of course, that's exactly what happened. The office door slammed open. I froze. There he was, my manager, face red, jaw tight, eyes blazing with the kind of anger that never ended well for people like me. "So this is what you're doing?" he sneered. "Planning to sue? Trying to ruin me?" Before I could speak, he grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the back exit. I stumbled after him, phone in my fist, heart smashing against my ribs. He shoved me outside into the alley behind the diner. The cold air hit my face, but it didn't calm me, it only made everything sharper. You listen to me, he growled, finger stabbing the air near my chest. You open your mouth about anything, and I'll make sure your brother loses his home care assistant. You think he struggles now? Watch what happens when I pull a few strings. My entire body went cold. He knew exactly where to hit me, exactly how to break me. My legs trembled. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. He smirked, like he'd already won. But then a shadow moved behind him. Footsteps. Calm. Steady. Purposeful. The manager turned, and his face drained of color. The man in the black suit was standing at the mouth of the alley. Tonight, he wasn't just observing. He wasn't silent. He wasn't distant. He looked furious. Good evening, the billionaire said quietly, his voice steady but edged like steel. My manager instantly straightened, forcing a fake laugh. We were just talking, friendly conversation. You know how employees get overwhelmed. The man cut him off with a look that could freeze blood. Then he stepped closer to me. Elena, he asked softly, did he threaten you? My throat closed. I opened my mouth, but the fear strangled every word. If I said yes, my brother would suffer. If I said no, I'd be lying to the only person who seemed willing to help me. I stayed silent. He studied me for a moment, not judging, not pushing, just understanding. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small sealed envelope. He placed it in my trembling hands. When you're ready, he murmured, read this. And trust me, he can't hurt you anymore. The manager reached to grab it, sputtering, she can't just take. The billionaire stepped between us, his eyes narrowing. Touch her again, he said calmly, and you'll regret it. The manager backed away instantly, sweat forming on his forehead. I realized in that moment, this man wasn't here to flirt, to play games, or to confuse me. He was here for something far bigger. Something connected to corruption, danger, and me. Hours later, after my shift, after my hands stopped shaking, after I locked the apartment door behind me, I finally opened the envelope. And when I saw what was inside, I gasped. Inside the envelope was more than paper. It felt like a doorway into a world I never imagined touching. The first thing that fell out was a sleek, heavy business card. A law firm. High profile. Expensive. The kind of firm people like me never even walked past, let alone interacted with. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Then I unfolded the documents. The top page was a typed paragraph, concise, cold, and life-altering. This diner is owned by Grant Industries. I am conducting undercover inspections to investigate internal corruption. What you witnessed, and what has been done to you, is part of a much larger case. Grant Industries. The name hit me like ice water. I flipped to the next page and read the name printed in bold. Alexander Grant. My breath caught. I knew that name. Anyone with access to a phone knew that name. A reclusive tech billionaire. Famous for silence. Famous for generosity. Famous for appearing in random places with no explanation. Secret inspections, hidden audits, surprise philanthropy. Oh my God. The man who left me $0 tips. Was him? And suddenly it made sense. The silence. The observation. The notes. The $0, not an insult, but a shield. A way to avoid attention, avoid exposure, avoid anyone recognizing him. He wasn't here to insult me. He was here because the diner was his. I turned the page and nearly dropped the document. Screenshots. Dozens of them. My manager stealing wages, my wages, and everyone else's. My manager pocketing customers' tips and blaming slow nights. Fake maintenance invoices he approved and paid into personal accounts. Harassing employees, verbal, physical, emotional, again and again. Even manipulating staffing so he could claim extra overtime payments. Every sickening detail documented. Every crime backed with evidence. My throat closed as I reached the final paragraph, printed in Alexander's direct, quiet handwriting. You are the only employee who has never stolen, lied, or mistreated a customer. That makes you the key witness. The words blurred. I pressed a hand over my mouth as tears gathered. Why me? Why choose me out of everyone? I wasn't special. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't anything. And then a memory whispered through my mind. My brother's voice on the night I cried after my third shift in a row. You deserve better. Elena. You always have. I hadn't believed him. But someone else apparently did. I folded the documents with shaking hands, tucked them carefully back into the envelope, and sat there on my small couch, trying to breathe. Trying to understand why a billionaire would place his trust, his case, his investigation, in my hands. The next evening, while my thoughts still churned like a storm inside me, he returned. Alexander Grant walked into the diner with the same quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need attention to fill the room. This time, he didn't sit down. He walked straight up to me. His voice was steady, low, almost gentle. I need to speak with you, he said quietly. Privately. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived, just the hum of an espresso machine and the faint glow of morning light bleeding through the windows. My hands were cold from the walk, but the cold inside me was deeper. Fear, hope, confusion, all tangled together. Alexander was already there, not surrounded by bodyguards. Not wearing designer sunglasses. Not acting like one of the richest men alive. He sat alone at a corner table with a cup of untouched coffee, looking almost human. Quiet, gentle, tired. When he saw me, he stood, not out of arrogance, but out of respect. Thank you for coming, he said softly. His voice didn't command the room. It didn't need to. It simply carried calm. I sat across from him, unsure where to look, unsure how to breathe. He folded his hands, eyes steady but warm. I owe you an apology, he began. I didn't want to scare you. I needed to know who I could trust. Hearing that from a billionaire felt unreal. I wasn't used to being trusted. I wasn't used to being anything. He pulled out a folder, thicker than the envelope he had given before, and placed it gently between us. What your manager has been doing is part of a much bigger corruption chain. Fake invoices, stolen wages, bribes. You saw only a fraction of it. I nodded slowly, the weight of it settling over me like a heavy coat. I need your help, he continued. I need you to testify. Testify. The word hit me like a blow. I pictured my manager's threats. His hand gripping my arm. His warning about my brother. The fear that had lived in my chest for months. My voice cracked. He'll fire me. Or worse. My brother. Alexander lifted a hand gently, stopping the spiral before it consumed me. I won't let anything happen to you, he said. Then he opened another folder, this one with documents that made my breath hitch. A full scholarship for your brother's medical treatment, he explained. Every bill. Every appointment. Covered. I stared, unable to speak. He continued, sliding over another paper. A new job at Grant Industries. Stable hours. Fair pay. Actual respect. Another page. Full legal support. Protection. A dedicated team to ensure your safety and your brother's. My throat closed. No one had ever offered me help without asking for something in return. No one had ever handed me hope wrapped so clearly, so solidly, so unbelievably. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I covered my face, embarrassed, but Alexander shook his head gently. It's all right, he murmured. You've carried everything alone for far too long. I nodded, trembling. I'll help you. I'll testify. I don't want him to hurt anyone else. For the first time since I met him, Alexander smiled, a small, genuine smile that softened the edges of his usually unreadable face. Good, he said, almost like a promise. Because tomorrow, everything changes. Outside the cafe, the wind picked up, rustling through the early morning air. I watched him walk away, his long coat billowing behind him like a shadow breaking apart. And I stood there clutching the documents, papers that didn't just hold information. They held a future I never thought I would get. Justice didn't arrive quietly. It arrived at 9:14 a.m., when the diner doors flew open and a group of corporate investigators stepped inside wearing dark suits and clipped ID badges. The entire room froze. Coffee cups paused mid-air. Conversations died instantly. Even the greasy smell of breakfast seemed to halt. My manager stumbled out of his office, confused and already sweating. What's going on here? He demanded, voice high and jittery. One of the investigators held up a file thick enough to crush a lie in seconds. We're here to conduct a full investigation into internal misconduct. The staff erupted into whispers, eyes darting between each other. Panic spread like wildfire. My manager's face twisted, and I saw the exact moment his survival instinct kicked in. "It's her," he shouted suddenly, pointing straight at me. "She's been stealing, lying, causing trouble. She's making false claims because she wants attention." His voice cracked as he realized no one was buying the performance. But he doubled down anyway, pushing past tables in a frantic attempt to pin his crimes on me. I stepped forward, my legs trembling, my heart trembling even more, but my voice came out steady. "I have proof," I said softly, holding out the folder Alexander had given me. The investigator took it, flipping through the documents. With every page his expression darkened. With every screenshot, every falsified invoice, every stolen hour. The truth wrapped itself tighter around the man who had tormented me for months. My manager lunged toward me like a cornered animal. "You think you've won," he screamed. "You think some pathetic waitress can ruin me? You're nothing, nothing." Before he could reach me, a shadow moved behind the investigators, and the diner went silent. Alexander Grant stepped inside. No disguise. No quiet corner booth. No anonymity. This time, he entered as himself. Gasps filled the room. Someone dropped a tray. A waitress whispered, "That's really him." My manager's knees nearly buckled. "Mr. Grant. I didn't know, this is all a misunderstanding." Alexander didn't even look at him at first. His eyes were on me. A calm, grounding look that made my lungs finally fill properly. Then he shifted his gaze to the investigators. "Proceed." They turned to my manager. "This is more than enough for termination. You're under arrest for wage theft, fraud, and employee harassment." My manager snapped, screaming half-formed threats, blaming everyone but himself. Officers entered and cuffed him while he shouted my name like a curse, but every word only exposed his guilt further. As he was dragged out, the diner felt lighter. Alexander stepped forward and spoke loud enough for the entire staff to hear. "She is the reason this place will be rebuilt with integrity." Applause broke out around me, hesitant at first, then growing. Co-workers who mocked me now approached with soft apologies. Others whispered thank you for being brave enough to do what they never could. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, overwhelmed. Alexander leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "You're not losing a job," he murmured. "You're gaining a future." The words hit deeper than he knew. When everything was finished, I removed my apron for the last time. I stepped out of the diner, the same door I had walked through exhausted, ashamed, and invisible for years. But today, sunlight washed over my face like freedom. For the first time in a long time, I walked away with my head high. 6 months passed. 6 months that felt like stepping out of a storm and into a sunrise I never thought I'd see. My life didn't just change. It unfolded into something unrecognizable, something gentler, safer, brighter. I now worked at Grant Industries, not as a waitress, not as a temp, not as someone who was talked down to or ignored, but as an administrative coordinator in a division where people actually listened when I spoke. People respected me. People valued me. My brother's medical treatment was fully funded. Every appointment, every therapy, every bill that once kept me awake at night was now handled with quiet efficiency by Alexander's team. I didn't have to work 3 jobs anymore. I didn't have to choose between food and medication. I didn't have to cry alone in bathroom stalls. For the first time in my life, stability didn't feel like a dream, it felt like home. One afternoon, as I was typing up reports in my small but bright office, a knock clicked against my doorframe. I looked up and almost laughed at the sight. Alexander leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the faintest smirk. "Still expecting a tip from me?" he asked. A laugh escaped me, a real one, the kind I hadn't heard from my own mouth in years. "I think you've given me enough," I said. He stepped inside, glancing around the office like he was checking if I truly felt settled here. "You earned this," he said simply. "All of it." After he left, I opened the top drawer of my desk, the drawer where I kept the one thing that started it all. The first note. Still folded. Still creased. Still carrying the faint stain of diner grease. I held it carefully, almost reverently. That tiny slip of paper had changed every corner of my life. I ran my thumb across the handwriting and felt the soft ache of everything I'd survived. Sometimes the smallest message leads to the biggest rescue. I stood and looked out across the office floor. Sunlight streamed through the windows, reflecting off glass walls and polished floors. People walked with purpose, greeted me with smiles, treated me like I belonged. And for the first time, I truly believed I did. I walked down the hallway, calm, empowered, steady, feeling the quiet poetry of a life rebuilt not through luck, but through truth, courage, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger who watched closely when no one else did. As the camera pulls back in my mind's eye, I can almost hear the closing line echo like a final heartbeat. He left a $0 tip, but he gave me a life worth more than money.